All right, here's some good solving quadratic equation questions. With this one here, I've got something in brackets squared minus 5. The easiest way to do this is to take the 5 and add it to both sides. So move it over to the right, and then use the square root principle. So I get x plus 16 squared equals 5. So square root this, square root this. When you square root the right side, it becomes a positive or a negative. And then on the left side, the square root and the square cancel. So I have x plus 16 is equal to the plus or minus square root of 5. Now I want to solve for x, so I have to subtract 16 on both sides. And typically we would write the minus 16 first. Although you could write it as plus or minus root 5 minus 16. So you could write it like that too, but typically we write the normal number first. There's no. So I have 1 over x plus 2 over x squared is equal to a negative 1. And I need to solve that equation. The thing that bothers me right off the bat is the fractions. So I'm going to use the I hate fraction rule to get rid of the fractions. I can do that because there's an equal sign. So the lowest common denominator will be x squared. So we'll multiply this by x squared, this by x squared, and this by x squared. Got to multiply them all. The first one, the x canceled. One of the x's canceled, so I'm left with an x. The next one, the x squareds all cancel, so it's plus 2, is equal to, on this side, it would be a negative 1x squared, or just negative x squared. Okay, now let's move the x squared over to the right, so it'll become positive x squared plus x plus 2 is equal to 0. Always make quadratics so they're equal to 0. Then see if you can factor it. If you can't factor it, like things that multiply to 2 and add to 1, there aren't any. So then you could either use complete the square or you can use a quadratic formula. I prefer using the quadratic formula. It just says solve, so it doesn't give me any way to do it. So I'm just going to use a quadratic formula. So the number in front of the x squared is a, so 1 would be x squared. The number in front of x will be b, again that's a 1. And the c will be a positive 2. Not a bad idea to write those down over on the side, just so you don't forget what they are. And they're all positive. So here's my formula. X equals minus b plus or minus square root of that stuff all over a couple of a's. So negative something plus or minus square root of something squared minus 4 times a couple somethings all over 2 times something. Now let's plug stuff in. B is a 1. B is a 1. A is a 1. And C is a 2. Okay, and then a down at the bottom is a 1. So I come up with negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared would be 1. All right, so I was interrupted there. So 1, and then 4 times 1 times 2 would be 8, so minus 8. Minus 8 all over 2. And so that's minus 1 plus or minus, a negative 7 over 2. And the negative 7, I can make that an I, right? So I can make that negative 1 plus or minus square root 7 times square root negative 1 all over 2. Or negative 1 plus or minus root 7i over 2. And when you put it over 2, you could put this one over 2 and this one over 2. You can do them separately. I did that just because that looks like what they have in one of the answers. I'd be picking that one. I think that one's right. Yep. All right, hopefully that helps.